Hey, welcome to my YouTube channel. I've been racking my brain as to what this first video should be, and after a long deliberation, I figured out why not start with my testimony. If this is the only video that I ever upload, I think it's a story worth saying, and I hope this one just floats out there and just does tremendous impact for the kingdom and gives you courage and hope as to how somebody's life can be transformed by the power of the gospel. So if you're not sure exactly what a testimony is, I think it's smart to just start with a definition. So a testimony is just a declaration by a witness who gives evidence in support of a fact or an assertion. And this is what my testimony is. It is me bearing witness to the fact of who God is and how He's revealed Himself to me personally through the Word and through my life experiences. And it's brought me to one conclusion, that Jesus is who He said He is. And if you read through the Gospels of Jesus, you'll find out that when somebody encounters Christ, they don't walk away the same. And so one of my favorite passages is from John 9, verse 39. Jesus said, "For judgment I have come into this world, so that those who see will become blind, but those who are blind will receive sight." So my testimony is how I went from spiritual blindness to sight, and the beautiful but agonizing process that it's been. So everyone has a unique encounter with Christ, and my story of transformation is still being written, even as I speak. But my conclusion remains the same, and it's that Jesus is who He said He is, and His gospel will truly change everything. All right, so to start out, let's go back to who I was. So without going back too far into my childhood, all I can say, I was just raised in a Christian household by two parents who were broken by their past mistakes and just being put back together by Christ. And so I was raised by God's grace in an environment that was actively seeking spiritual development through, regular church attendance and fellowship with fellow believers. And this is where I was first exposed to the idea that A, God exists, and B, He desires to be in relationship with each one of us personally. Well, fast forward through a childhood of a dozen or so sinner's prayers and even a hilarious accidental baptism at 5 years old. I found myself as a 12-year-old angsty preteen alone in my bedroom, and I just became painfully aware, and I believe this is by the Spirit of God, His just amazing grace on me as a 12-year-old. I came to the conclusion that I just was not a good person. It was like I finally saw who I was, and it broke me. And so in my room all by myself, when I was 12 years old, I got down beside my bed and I just remember crying out to God to save me. Just save me from who I am. And that marked what I would say is the beginning of my spiritual life. I had entered into the battle of flesh and spirit and started a lifelong journey that's going on till today. But my development as a teen, I think growing up as in a Christian household under parents who are actively serving in ministry would guarantee somebody to become like a super healthy Christian. But I was hampered by two things. I was probably hampered by a whole bunch of stuff, but I kind of narrowed it down to like two things. One is surrender, and the other one is pride. There's a big difference between calling out to Christ for eternal salvation and then letting Him save you from stupid every day. And this is where I learned to just play the Christian game. So if you don't know what the Christian game is, I'll summarize it for you. The Christian game is one where we settle for proximity rather than intimacy with God. So rather than it being who we are, it just becomes a thing that we do. We settle into letting our church culture around us call the shots, rather than pushing into Christ with all of our heart, soul, mind, and strength every day. We just settle for putting on a Christian mask. So one of these requires like daily intentional effort, while the other one can just be accomplished like a few hours a week. And so of course I just settled, for the few hours a week. And as I grew up in church, I remained infantile in my faith, and I was accustomed to just kind of following the majority rather than developing a habit of going to God for guidance and all things in my life, I would just settle to conform to whatever everyone around me was doing. I mean, they all go to church, right? So they're all Christian. Wrong. The other thing that stunted my spiritual growth was pride. So there's a very important verse in the Bible that says God gives grace to the humble, but he resists the proud. And man, I was a prideful little and I was the pastor's kid. I was a leader in youth group. I led worship and preached like little sermons and went street evangelizing and spent most of weeknights at Bible studies. And I thought that my service to God somehow made me better and more important and ultimately valued. I held on to all of those things that I was doing as just an identity. And rather than being propped up by the grace of God and a relationship with Him, I was propped up by really my environment and ego and just works. And much like a guy who builds a house on sand rather than a rock, I was poised for a crash. And I think Mike Tyson was right. Everyone has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. Hope you enjoyed the video. Just want to thank the Lord for giving me a reason to share the hope that I found in Him. And thank you for watching. And make sure you take a moment to like your neighbor as yourself, comment to someone about the hope within you, and subscribe to Seeking the Truth, Living in Freedom.